Hello, I am Rebecca Stewart and I'm taking your ECCE 1101 online class 40022. And I am doing my presentation on Patty Smith Hill. Here we go. Patty Smith Hill grew up in Louisville, Kentucky in a well-to-do family, and her upbringing greatly influenced her philosophies about education. Her father, William Hill, could be considered a feminist because he encouraged all of his children to pursue education and careers regardless of their gender. One of his fears was that his daughter would marry for a home because she could not support herself. He married a woman, Martha Hill, who shared similar views. Martha Hill could not receive a degree because of her gender, but was still privately tutored at a college level. Patty Hill and her siblings were raised in a home that valued independent thinking, creativity, and free play. Once Hill started her career in early childhood education, she began studying with some well-known educators and philosophers. Under G. Stanley Hall at Clark University, she studied and investigated research in the field of child psychology. Later, she went to the University of Chicago and studied with John Dewey. She also got to spend a good portion of her summers with Luther Gulick, who was the father of the U.S. playground movement, and Colonel Francis W. Parker, while Friedrich Vorbelt was widely known for starting the kindergarten movement. Hill did not blindly follow his theories. For example, she believed that his gifts for the blocks were too small for young children, and she made her own set of blocks 16 times larger. In 1887, Hill graduated from the Louisville Collegiate University, and then under Anna E. Bryan started to work at Louisville Kindergarten Training School, and eventually became the principal and supervisor. 5 years later, she became a founding member of the International Kindergarten Union and was very active in conferences and meetings with other kindergarten directors to share her new thoughts and innovative ideas. Impressively, in 1922, she was promoted to full professor at Teachers College. She is also, she wrote the song Good Morning All, which was turned into Happy Birthday. Kindergartens in Patty Smith Hill's time were polar opposites from the kindergartens that she outlined. A traditional kindergarten would typically have a circle time where children would sit still and silently while the teachers told a story with a lesson in it. Children were not to ask questions or share their perspective, and teachers were not instructed to check for understanding or get the children to think deeper about the meaning of the story or how it applies to their own lives. After story time, children would move to their desks very quietly and sit upright with their feet on the floor and their hands on the desk, while their teachers gave them a formal gift, like the blocks mentioned earlier. Teachers would then instruct the children exactly how to play with them. With the encouragement of Dean Russell, a mentor of Hill, Hill opened an experimental kindergarten that put the emphasis on free play in Sprayer School, which is located in New York. The classes were made up of children aged 3 to 7 years old with no prior school experience. Miss Hill focused on teaching the children that they had and not an ideal child from the times. This schooling philosophy was considered far too progressive when it first opened, so when the preschool or the kindergarten first opened, so Hill did not initially call it a kindergarten, but rather Miss Hill's playroom. Patty Smith Hill did not think that kindergarten teachers should stop once they meet the children's physical needs, but rather work to meet their social needs as well. One way that Hill had the children work on teamwork was by giving a student a block that was too large and heavy for the single student to pick up. Other students would come and help the first student pick up the block, and then they would learn that teamwork makes the dream work. Hill was also a firm believer in democracy and thought that the best way to teach democracy to young children was to make it about something that they cared about. One example that she witnessed in Teachers College of democracy working at a kindergartner's level was when a teacher, Miss Garrison, brought a canary bird to class and a student, Jack, wanted to name it. He first asked if the bird had a name. Miss Garrison told him that he did not. Jack then wanted to name the bird after himself, and the teacher asked if the bird would then belong to him. And after a moment of thinking, Jack said that the bird belonged to the class and agreed that the class should name the bird. Miss Garrison then encouraged Jack to hold a class meeting. He got everyone's attention, and some students got chairs for him, and they all put them in a circle. Jack explained that it needed to be a circle so that every child could see each other. And then Jack facilitated a discussion. During the discussion, Jack made sure that no one talked over or ignored anyone, and that everyone got to put in their own input. And then finally, they came to a conclusion on what the bird should be called. He'll also notice that children imitate adults, so she is a big advocate for dress up and make-believe play. She encourages all of her students to dress up for all different types of careers, such as firemen, policemen, bakers, carpenters, painters, and gardeners. Her hope was that through the exposure to all these different occupations, the children would have a greater respect for laborers. If all children are positively introduced to all different types of jobs and careers, then eventually the division between social and economic classes would lessen over time. Patty Smith Hill was also a strong believer that every child is a unique individual with their very own personality. During free play, her teachers should take detailed notes on each child to hone in on their personality and their individuality so that lessons could be catered to each and every student, according to Hill. She also encouraged teachers to have parent interviews in order to learn more about the child and how the child behaves at home, and so that teachers can then inform parents on the progress that their child is making. Just as her mother raised her to value independent thinking, she in turn encouraged students to participate in independent thinking as well. As previously mentioned, Patty Smith Hill ran a kindergarten called Miss Hill's Playroom. While it was not initially accepted, people soon became to appreciate her methods, and her kindergartens were universally observed. After her experiments were successful, she called for every city to have their own experimental kindergarten for observation. Also, during the Great Depression, she was a strong advocate for universal preschool. She was before, but even more so during the Great Depression, because since both parents were working to put food on the table, Hill was very concerned that children were becoming neglected. She also encouraged parental education so that there would be cohesion between the values taught at school and at home. The Cold War also took away some attention from the creativity that Hill worked so hard to put back in schools, and instead put a very heavy focus on mathematics and science in making sure every child made good grades. And so lots of the work that she had put in was not really in use much long after her death. However, her practices still impact younger grades such as preschools and kindergartens and some very early education, but not so much higher grades such as middle school and high schools. That is my presentation for the PowerPoint section. And then I also have the game that we're supposed to have. So here, if I scroll up to the top, it's kind of a quiz game. You have 10 questions that I made, and they're all color coordinated. Some are multiple choice, some are true and false, and some are short answer, while others are thoughts, like each player would put their own input into how they think certain things are. So basically each group would be of 2 to 3 students, and then they would draw a card. They'd be like flipped over, and then they would draw a card, and then you would roll a dice to see who gets to try and answer the question first, and then the highest roller would get to go first. And then you would try to answer, and if you answer correctly, you get bonus points or points. And then if you miss the question incorrectly or you don't get to answer it, you either get no points or penalty points, only if you answer incorrectly. Some questions require responses from every player, such as the one which of the following would you like to teach at and why? Just questions like that. Get everyone talking about education. And then some of them, if you answer it incorrectly or the people don't get to answer because they weren't the highest roller, have to do further research or an activity. The only activity one I think is the one about which song she wrote, which was Happy Birthday. Here. And then if you miss it or you don't get to answer it, you just have to sing Happy Birthday out loud. But other ones, you have to do some further research. Like the light green one. Yeah, let me scroll back up. Did Patty Smith Hill blindly follow Floorball's educational philosophies? And then the answer was no. And so if they answered yes, or every student would have to look up and explain the Floorball system and share whether or not they agree with it, why and why not. So this just expands the knowledge on all things Patty Smith Hill and education. Thank you for your time. I'm going to go ahead and end my presentation. Okay, thank you.